Do not adjust your sets. This is Formula One on ITV. I am Jim Rosenthal. This used to be Melbourne, the cultural capital of Australia, the Emerald City of Oz. It used to be a quiet sort of place, but now it's Formula One town.
Formula 105.1, Melbourne's all-new Triple M.
Formula 105, Melbourne's all-new Triple M special Grand Prix edition.
New team for Damon Hill. He's relishing his challenge at Arrows. New venture for Jackie Stewart, back with son Paul. Watch out for the new tartan on the track. My first job's to introduce you to the ITV team. Simon Taylor and Tony Jardine will be the analysts with me in the studio. Simon's been the voice of motorsport for over 20 years now, a prolific writer and broadcaster who knows the Grand Prix world inside out. Tony's another familiar voice, F1 team management, technical expertise, journalist. Tony's been there and done that. We've got two reporters behind the scenes. James Allen's been in motor racing all his life. If it moves in the pits, James will be there and you'll know about it. Louise Goodman's working alongside James. 7 years as press officer of the Jardine team puts her very much on the inside track. In the commentary box, Martin Brundle joins Mr. Formula One Murray Walker. Martin brings with him up-to-date authority of close to 160 races at this level. Formula One without Murray Walker doesn't bear thinking about. So that's the ITV lineup. Now here are James and Louise with the teams and drivers for 97.
Britain's own world champion Damon Hill is in for a tough time in 1997. Booted out by Williams last year, he's starting again with the Arrows Yamaha team. It'll take a miracle to hold on to his world title. Hill's teammate at Arrows, Brazilian Pedro Diniz.
The bookies' favourite for the world title this year is Jacques Villeneuve. He's quick and takes risks, but he needs consistency to take the crown. Villeneuve's new teammate is Heinz-Harald Frentzen. The German is considered one of the fastest drivers in Formula One, but can he handle the pressure at Williams?
Ferrari has sold out its blood-red colour scheme, but will it change their luck? Michael Schumacher is the world's best driver, but he won't accept any technical cock-ups from Ferrari. If the package is right, then the outspoken Ulsterman Eddie Irvine might spring a surprise or two.
Benetton failed to win in '96, but the new car is a flyer. Veteran Austrian Gerhard Berger once again lines up with fiery Frenchman Jean Alesi.
McLaren spent a fortune on its launch. The Spice Girls were a big hit with the drivers. Scotsman David Coulthard, yet to hit the form with McLaren he showed in '95 with Williams, and his teammate Mika Hakkinen, the floppy-haired Finn, still looking for his first Formula One win.
Jordan Peugeot's new colour scheme is aggressive, and so are the drivers. Ralf Schumacher, younger brother of Michael, joins Italian ace Giancarlo Fisichella, one of karting's greatest ever champions.
Also opting for youth, Tyrrell Ford has hired Dutchman Jos Verstappen alongside the flying Finn Mika Salo, both hoping to be spotted by a top team this year.
Triple world champion Jackie Stewart has his own team this year, and he's chosen Brazilian Rubens Barrichello and Denmark's Jan Magnussen to head the lineup.
The legendary Alain Prost has taken over at Ligier. The cars are now called Prost-Mugen Hondas and will be driven by Monaco Grand Prix winner Olivier Panis and Japan's new hope Shinji Nakano.
Sauber has splashed out on some powerful Ferrari engines. Britain's own Johnny Herbert leads the team alongside Italian veteran Nicola Larini.
Making up the numbers, the new Lola team has Italian Vincenzo Sospiri and Brazilian Ricardo Rosset. While looking to make the big leap forward, Italian Minnows Minardi have chosen Japan's Ukio Katayama and Italian karting sensation Jarno Trulli.
Hello, good afternoon to you all from Melbourne. Good morning to you back in Britain. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. We're 11 hours ahead of you here in Melbourne, so it's round about 20 to 1 On a very pleasant Saturday, conditions up in the 70s, nothing like those excesses that tennis players had here recently, and they're saying that the conditions will be just about the same for the big race. It's the second year the race has been staged here in Melbourne, and Simon, welcome. And a heck of a motor racing pedigree this city's got.
Well, very much so. The Australian Grand Prix has always been a significant race. It used, in the Adelaide days, of course, to be the climax of the season, frequently resolved the World Championship. Now, here in Melbourne, it's going to start answering all the questions that we haven't been able to answer over the winter. There is a historical pedigree, as you say, because back in the 1950s, there used to be a track going anti-clockwise round the lake here at Albert Park. Sterling Moss won here for Maserati in 1956.
And Sterling's here for this one, and if you just peek over my right shoulder, you can see him keeping an eye on our proceedings at the moment. Tony, nice to see you. Now, it's the great Grand Prix, this one. FOCA, the Formula One Constructors Association, said it was the best in the world last year. It means a lot to the city.
It means a heck of a lot to the city. They know the eyes of the world are upon them, and Melbourne in particular. Melbourne have had a right war going with Sydney. Sydney's got the Millennium Olympics, but Melbourne have got the Grand Prix. They aim to keep it, and Ron Walker, who's the chairman of this race here, knows a few tricks about promoting events, and certainly entered a war of words in the media with Michael Schumacher when he criticised the track.
Yeah, that's been big news all week, and we'll hear a bit more about that row involving Michael Schumacher a bit later on in the show. But let's meet the men who are going to guide you through the qualifying session here at Melbourne. Murray Walker, and he's with his new mucker, Martin Brundle. Let's have a chat to them.
Thanks, Jim. Every Grand Prix season is special for me, but this one is especially special because alongside me, my friend Martin Brundle, and it's all going to be different. Different teams, different engines, different cars, different drivers, and changes of drivers. How do you see it, Martin?
Well, from what we've seen already this Saturday morning, it's going to be very exciting and very close. There's been a lot of evolution of cars over the winter, and we have so many fast cars. The Ferrari looks good, Williams strong, of course, McLaren looks really excellent, Jordans are going well, and I think it's going to be very close and very exciting, which is good for us.
Indeed it is. So, back to you, Jim.
Thanks very much indeed, Murray. We'll be back with Murray and Martin in around about a quarter of an hour's time. But throughout this Formula One season, we're going to pop behind the scenes and look at one or two things that might enhance your understanding and enjoyment of Grand Prix. We've got a series of features that we're calling Inside F1. And for the first of them, we spoke to David Coulthard and asked David to show us exactly what goes on inside that cockpit in the McLaren.
Hi, now we're going to take a little look in my office where I do my work on the weekend. If you come in close here, you can see basically we control the whole car via the steering wheel here. The back of the wheel we have our gears, which you can see right hand for up, left hand for down. Here we have our clutch paddles, so you've got a choice of left or right clutch paddles. And then when you come round to the front of the steering wheel, you can see that everything's pretty much self-explanatory. You can see you've got a radio sticker above that one there, which is the radio. Got your drink button. You have your pit lane speed limiter, which obviously you have to use during the pit stops. And then when you come for your pit stop, you have your neutral button. And this little chap here in the middle is a light just to let you know that when you've activated the radio, that the radio's live, and you have to push that button again to kill the radio. And that pretty much is our steering wheel. And obviously a nice Mercedes badge right in the middle, just to remind you of the power plant that's behind.
Thank you, David. And David Coulthard hoping for a better season in that silver McLaren than he had a year ago. Well, one thing I've already noticed about this sport, they love a rumour, a bit of chat and gossip, and as Tony's been mentioning, Michael Schumacher's been right in the middle of all things this week, because he said that the Albert Park circuit wasn't particularly special, and the locals didn't like that at all, and one called him an overpaid prima donna. Mind you, there are quite a few people around these parts who don't want to see Schumacher or any other Grand Prix driver for that matter. They say it's in the wrong place, complaining the event disrupts life in Albert Park for more than 4 months. Diesel was poured on the track last weekend. It's all been cleared up. There's a threat to disrupt the race. Now there's a tyre war going on. Bridgestone are being used by 5 of the smaller teams, including Damon Hill's Arrows, and for the first time in 6 years, Goodyear have an opponent. The battle will be really interesting when it rains. In testing, the new rivalry has produced some startlingly quick times. David Coulthard has high hopes in that silver McLaren. He's been taking the controls of a fighter plane and getting in the mood to turn over the opposition. Peter Phillips, the son of the Princess Royal, is part of the new Stewart team. Phillips, an outstanding rugby player, is here on work experience. Nice work if you can get it. Melbourne's very proud of its trams, but you wouldn't know it this weekend. The strikes immobilised all public transport. Not much common ground between the warring factions.
And if these guys want to be bloody minded about it, they'll have to incur the wrath of the community.
OK, well, despite that, they're expecting a crowd of round about 120,000 for the big race. Now that Grand Prix tittle-tattle factory, I don't know if you heard the one about Damon Hill ripping up his contract and say he didn't want to drive for Arrows, apparently because of the problems he was having in his car. Nice story, not a shred of truth in it. Damon Hill is here, all set to try and qualify in the Arrows. Damon Hill, here he is now, world champion, still got #1, and he's talking to Louise Goodman.
Well, thank you, Jim. Yes, I'm down here with Damon Hill. Damon, 12 months ago, a lot of bleary-eyed punters in England tuned in. The expectation you were going to get pole, win the first race, go on to win the championship. 12 months on, what's the expectation now?
Well, so far, I've spent more time on a Honda motorbike than in my Yamaha. It's been tough going. We've had a few problems, so my expectations are not to get on pole position, but my expectations are that, you know, I want to get in the top 10 if we can. That would be a good result for us.
Damon, you are the world champion. Does it frustrate you that a lot of members of the public don't understand that you won't be challenging for pole and for race wins straight away?
It doesn't frustrate me. I just think it's quite difficult. I can appreciate why it's difficult to understand that, but that's the nature of Formula One, all the shenanigans and the toing and froing with you know, politics and moves and everything. But here I am at Arrows, and we're doing our best to improve the package, improve the team, and be back at the front as soon as we can.
Very briefly, you had a tough session this morning. What are your expectations from this afternoon?
Well, I want to go out there and give it my best as usual, and try and get the maximum we can out of the car and see where we end up. Top 10 would be good.
Very best of luck, Damon.
Thank you.
Unmistakably, James Allen asking the questions. We'll hear from Louise down there in the pits in just a moment. What about Damon then, Simon?
Well, the man relishes a challenge. Of course, the great challenge of his life last year was to win the World Championship. He did that. I think that this is a greater challenge for him than if he had remained at Williams and had Jacques Villeneuve biting away at his ankles. He wants it to be difficult, but he wants to win through, and I think that he'll be quite happy to be starting this race and trying to go through to finish it, and then see the car move gradually up the grid as the season goes on.
But Tony, briefly, all sorts of troubles they've been having, the Arrows.
Yes, they have. They have had a lot of troubles, but Damon knew that was going to happen. But he is happy to be out of Williams, and he does relish this challenge, and a team that is built around him.
Cheers, thanks very much. Well, after the break, we will be joining Louise Goodman in the pits, and she'll be talking to the man they've all got to catch here in Melbourne, the overwhelming World Championship favourite, Jacques Villeneuve. Hello once again, you're watching F1 on ITV. We're about to find out who'll start where in the first Grand Prix of 1997. In recent history, the winner of the first race has gone on to win the title. Tony, your thoughts on who's going to win this year?
You're not going to like this, but I'm not going for the Villeneuve and Schumacher at the moment. They're obvious. I'll let Simon go for those guys. The big outside bet is Gerhard Berger. At 37 years of age, he's the oldest guy on the track. He's taken over from our Marty Brundle, who's gone up into the commentary box. But the team's going really well. He's fitter and faster than ever before, and he's got the car really, really flying, and it's his last chance for the championship. Otherwise, he's going to be too old.
Brave shout, that one, Simon.
Well, I'm going to be much more predictable as Tony forecasts. I'm obviously going to go for Williams and for Villeneuve, but the interesting thing is going to be how long will it take Schumacher to get the Ferrari going well? Will we have a battle between those two by the time the season gets to its end?
OK then, let's pop down to the pits and join Louise Goodman. You'll recognise the difference, believe me. And here she is, talking to the Canadian favourite.
Down here in the pit lane with Jacques Villeneuve. Jacques, in virtually all of the pre-season previews that I've read, you're listed as the hot favourite for the championship. Does that put you under any extra pressure here?
It does put extra pressure, but it's good pressure because it's people expecting for it to work out, so that's only positive compared to last year anyway.
You made your debut here last year. 1 year on, how have things changed?
Well, I know the tracks now. I've been working with the team for a full year. I know the atmosphere of Formula One, so all the basics I've learned, now I just have to improve on them.
It's fair to say, isn't it, that you've had a few teething problems in the lead up to the start of the season?
Yeah, the car's always been very quick, but we always had reliability problems, and that seems to have been fixed.
You'll thought that the time that you've just set in this session is 4 seconds faster than the pole time for this race last year. Where's that time come from?
Well, all the team know the track now, gear ratios and all that. Well, last year it was all new, and then everybody's got new tires, and the tires this year are much softer.
And in fact, that pole time was set by you. Are you confident that you can repeat that performance again this afternoon?
Well, it went really well this morning. I'm sure the opposition will fight hard this afternoon, and it's going to be tighter, but we're going to give it our best shot.
Well, best of luck. Thanks very much.
Jacques Villeneuve so quick this morning, his time sent a shiver down the pit lane. Right, let's take a closer look at this circuit here in Albert Park. Just over 3 miles. In the race itself, they'll go 58 laps. Let's get the views of a man who really flew here last year. It's our own Martin Brundle.
Join me for a lap with Michael Schumacher with a computer simulated version of the Melbourne circuit with a unique camera position just behind the car. The pit straight, move the car over to the left hand side, ready for turn 1, a right hander, bumpy under braking. Turn 2, it's going to ease up on the outside and plenty of room to accelerate very, very hard. A sweeping curve towards turn 3 where I infamously crashed last year. Using somewhat more curb than this simulation shows, Schumacher would now be through 4, hard on the accelerator, 700 horsepower into 5, easy on the way in, it tightens on the way out, and now we're going to go through a shady area. The trees shade the circuit, difficult to spot the apex into 7 and 8. 8 will be flat out with a bit of rubber on the circuit. You just appear to be threading the car through some concrete walls. You're sitting very low to the ground. Ready for 9, again difficult to spot, but 10's going to open up and we get hard on the power. The acceleration is amazing. Another curve here now, and it's very difficult once again to spot this track. It's a bit of no man's land here where we have the curve on the left hand, accelerate hard, back down into 3rd gear, using grass and everything else on the outside of the corner to minimise the angle. An easy straight here now, take time, who's around you, check the gauges, and ready for 13. Relatively straightforward, 90-degree corner, hard braking, hard acceleration, over to the left again for 14. One of the most difficult corners on the circuit, over to the right for 15, easy to lock your wheels, swing over to the left hard, ready for 16, once again leading you into the pit straight. Take your pit board information, where you are in the race, pluses and minuses and any other relevant information.
Our thanks to Signosis for that special view of the track. Martin will be driving us around every circuit we visit and hopefully keeping all 4 wheels on the ground as well. But Simon, what about Schumacher? What's he moaning about?
It's a surprise, isn't it? I mean, no circuit is perfect. In fact, this is a circuit that's very popular with a lot of the drivers. Jacques Villeneuve reckons it's one of the best of the year. One of the interesting points, though, is that, of course, it has no other motor racing use during the year. That means it's very slippery. It hasn't got a solid rubber line that's been put down. Although the track is getting faster from Friday on through Sunday, it's still going to be slippery all the way through to the end of tomorrow's race.
Just looking outside, it's a fantastic sight despite that strike we mentioned. Over 400,000 people they're expecting here in Albert Park over the 4 days, and over 120,000 for the race itself. Okay, settle back and enjoy the first qualifying session of 1997 in the company of Martin Brundle and the one and only Murray Walker.
Formula One 1997 starts here and now at Albert Park, Melbourne. A great place for the race, the advertising says, and they're not kidding. It's been rejuvenated from what it was like before, and it's in absolutely superb condition. And out there in the pit lane, slightly to the left on your picture you're looking at, are the 24 competitors, and this is what they have to do. First of all, they have to achieve a time which is within 107% of the pole position time, and that is going to be very difficult indeed for two men in particular here today. Riccardo Rosset, the Brazilian, and Vincenzo Sospiri, the Italian, who are driving the new Lola Fords. It's a brand new team, and they've got an underpowered engine in comparison with many people, and it's going to be a real struggle for them. But they've only got 12 laps. Each of the drivers is allowed 12 laps, and they will have 4 sets of tyres. They can go out for 3 laps on each of those sets of tyres. And my goodness, has that man, magical Jacques Villeneuve, given them a yardstick. This morning, in the second of the 2 free practice sessions, the times for which do not count for the grid, he went round in 1 minute 25.594 seconds, a quite incredible 3.8 seconds below his own pole time yesterday. His teammate Heinz-Harald Frentzen was in second place, ahead of David Coulthard, going well in the McLaren. Eddie Irvine beat his teammate, double world champion Michael Schumacher, this morning, but it's this afternoon that counts. Irvine was 4th, Häkkinen was 5th, Michael Schumacher was in 6th position. And those are the men who are going to be making the pace this afternoon in practice, pole position for the qualifying session. And down in the pit lane, news from Louise Goodman.
I've got Damon Hill with me. Damon, you had a lot of problems in that session.
Well, I had to take the spare car to start with. There was a problem with my race car, and then I got in my race car. That had a problem again, so I got back in the spare car, and it was really difficult to get any continuity going.
It was a bit touch and go at the end there. How are you feeling now?
Well, I feel we could have done a lot better than we did do. I think that the lack of running this morning didn't help us, so I'm a touch disappointed with the performance, but we're in the race anyway.
Thanks, Damon.
Well, now, what's all this harouche around Eddie Irvine's Ferrari?
Well, in reality, there's 2 minutes and 13 seconds. You can get back here in about 1 minute and 40 seconds. So, strictly speaking, they could get another flying lap in, as long as they start that flying lap before 0 time. And they're entitled to do that. So maybe there will be a restart.
In the pit lane, we look at Jacques Villeneuve, and it seems that when the restart is going to be at 8 minutes past 2. That's just about 1 3/4 minutes time. And meantime, as you see, Eddie Irvine sitting in there with the blankets on the tyres, his teammate Schumacher doing the same thing.
Just remembering that, although it's not particularly relevant today because they'll run out of time before they run out of laps, those 20 cars that were on the track when the red flag was put out will have that lap credited back to them. So, they don't lose a lap. What you do lose is the out lap. So you're still penalised in some way if that's the situation. But it's the luck of the draw if you happen to be out there when the reds start fluttering.
You've got to take your hat off to Michael Schumacher. He had 2 years as world champion with Benetton in 1994 and 95. And then he made the decision that because he wanted a new challenge, he was going to Ferrari. And my goodness, that was a challenge because the car was far from being a race winner and he needed to help the team to do all sorts of things. Well, he's helped them. He won 3 races in his first year with Ferrari last year, including that quite incredible victory in appalling weather at Barcelona for the Spanish Grand Prix, where he was in a class of his own. So the second is about to start.
And this is where the friendliness of Grand Prix drivers completely finishes. This is a race onto the track, and there'll be cars at the sharp end of it that want to get into the line. They want to get into the line and get out on the racetrack, and because all the other guys in the queue won't let them.
Green light, pit lane open.
Murray, thank you very much indeed, and our thanks to Martin Brundle as well. What a fantastic qualifying session we've seen here in Melbourne, the first Formula 1 of the 97 season. They all like that, Simon?
Well, that was a particularly splendid time, wasn't it? I mean, particularly those final 2 minutes, several people deciding they could improve. They were just able to get past the start-finish line before the checkered flag came out. That gave them a chance to have another go. We were worried that perhaps Damon Hill was going to get bumped out again.
Hey, we were worried. I think there were a few million people back there were pretty worried as well. But Tony, it was a very, very close thing for Damon.
Oh, very, very close indeed. He must have taken a huge, deep breath and thought about the prospect of non-qualification being the world champion.
But he did it here, didn't he?
Yeah,
on his hot lap.
Yeah, he did. And he summoned everything here for this lap. And as Martin described, the car was twitching all over the place. The tyres weren't up to temperature. But he concentrated. Those are the things that he learnt to do at Williams when he was developing that car. And he used all his craft to put that final lap together.
How much of a problem is it for him, though, Simon? He's gone from world champion to just qualifying here by the skin of his teeth. That must be virtually unprecedented.
Well, professional racing drivers don't spend very long thinking about what's gone before. They think about today's problem and the future. And Damon will be looking at this as the first part of what is going to be a long and challenging season. It's a matter of gradually improving the car. He's working on the car. He was working on the car during this hour of qualifying this afternoon, and by a fifth of a second, he worked upon it well enough to scrape into this race on the 10th row.
Tony, he said to us right at the start of the show, don't expect too much from me. But he surely wouldn't have anticipated a nail-biting situation like he had here.
No, and the other problem for him is England expects as well, but everything has gone wrong through the testing, through this session here. Water pipes have broken, the air wouldn't go through the air intake
The seat didn't arrive at one stage as well.
The seat didn't arrive, nose cone fell off before he got it, and the guy who had the most laps in it was our own Martin Brundle. He did 17 laps in the car at Silverstone to finally call Damon and tell him the car's all right, don't worry about it, when the Sun decided that he'd already torn up his contract.
Well, you get a view on the screen now of exactly how much that gap is, 129.3 to 135.4. It was 21st fastest then. He then went slightly quicker, made it 20th fastest.
And that's when all the sighs of relief echoed around here and echoed throughout Britain, I would think. So Damon will be in the Australian Grand Prix here in Melbourne. Let's talk about a couple of the other British drivers who've done really well before we move on and talk about the Williams and Frentzen and Villeneuve. Let's talk about David Coulthard, shall we?
He's done a tremendous job. I think he'd be very, very pleased with that because he's ahead of Häkkinen. And they had a tremendous battle last year, as we remember. It was just won by Häkkinen in the end, but those two are very, very close. Häkkinen acknowledged as the fastest driver in the world, and I think he can put it together. But Coulthard suffered from inconsistency towards the tail end of the season by his own admission. Now this season, with all his extreme sports experience, hanging off mountains, mountain bikes and things, tuning himself in, he's got to do it right from when the red lights go out this year, and I think he's in good shape there.
Murray was very enthusiastic about Johnny Herbert today.
Yes, tremendous performance by Johnny Herbert with the Sauber, with that Petronas Ferrari engine. Until that final scramble right at the end, Johnny Herbert was actually 5th quickest, so he was going to start on the 3rd row. He got bumped down to 7th. It's still a 4th row start for Johnny Herbert, and that's a very, very good prospect for the rest of the season for Sauber and for Johnny.
Well, it's great to see the British drivers up there in the top 5 or 6. But let's move on and talk about Williams, based at Grove in Oxfordshire. Now, throughout the winter, people have been saying, oh, we're going to be closer to them this year, and they're not so good this year. And they played a very, very canny game, and they pulled the covers off here today, Tony.
Yeah, they have, and a lot of it has got to do with the psyche of that man, Jacques Villeneuve. The thing is, when he got into his first season in IndyCar, he was no good in the beginning of the first season. At the end of the second season, he was getting it together. In his second year, he won the Indy 500, and then he won the championship as well. We're seeing the same thing here. His development is incredible.
Yeah, you can see this hot lap now, and the time on the left was the time that he had done before this lap. Look at him running across that grid, that curb then. He crosses the start-finish line, 129.369, carves a great chunk off it. But it is the psychology, and the man who really is coming under pressure from that psychology is, of course, poor old Heinz-Harald Frentzen. We thought he was going to start on the 4th row of the grid. That would have been a disaster. He pulled it out of the bag right at the end, delivered it back to Villeneuve again. They're both going to start on the front row of the grid, and I think the battle between those two is going to go on.
But the battle within the Williams team is really interesting. I mean, you've got one team here, and what was going on down in the pits? A bit of blocking or something like that?
Well, it's just you needed to get to the front of the queue in order to get out and get across the line before the clock started ticking away. But there's something else that we should mention. Villeneuve has won an internal battle there to go his own way with the setup of the car, which is very, very important, because halfway through last year, Patrick Head, the technical director of the team, was throwing his arms up in the air and saying, you can't set this car up like an Indy car, you know, this is a Formula One car, chap, you can't do it. And he persisted and he persisted, and he got his own way and then started improving the car, and even Damon was using some of his settings towards the end of the year. That guy is, I'm not saying he's controlling things, but he's now getting his own way.
But let's put it into perspective, 1 3/4 seconds is still the gap between Villeneuve on pole position and Frentzen second quickest. So in terms of time on the track, the gap is still huge between Villeneuve and Frentzen.
And Villeneuve suggesting that he could go a little bit quicker in the race itself, but Heinz-Harald Frentzen absolutely delighted to claim that place behind his Williams colleague and get that second place here.
Well, he must be very, very relieved, and I think he was trying so hard on that final run, and we're wondering just exactly what Heinz-Harald Frentzen thinks about it himself.
Well, no, I think we're just going to see his reaction here, Simon, and he's going to be a very happy fella, because we thought that things were going to go wrong for him, but Heinz-Harald Frentzen obviously very, very happy indeed. Panis, who's been all over the place here over the weekend, isn't he, spinning off. But it'll mean a lot to Heinz-Harald Frentzen. But I mean, you have to ask, has he got any chance of catching Villeneuve tomorrow?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, again, there's a lot of people back home in Britain will be thinking, hang on, this is the guy that Damon Hill was sacked for. So he better be good and he'd be up there, but the gap is huge. So he's feeling the pressure because Frentzen is living in UK now. He's trying to get used to speak English better, get himself in with the psyche of the team and so on. And it's not really showing itself. It's not in evidence at the moment. And it goes back to, allegedly, the fact that Damon, they thought about getting rid of Damon at the end of his really bad season a year before this.
Sure.
And I think that's more and more obvious as an explanation, because you wouldn't sack Damon after his performance last year. I wouldn't, you wouldn't.
Well, give Frentzen a little time. I mean, this is only his first race. He is coming into the team just as Villeneuve came in last year. And even the Williams team themselves reckoned that although Villeneuve's first race here in Melbourne was wonderful, he then had a quieter time for the first half of the season before he really started to get going well. So give Frentzen a little bit of time. Remember also that reliability could play a part in this race. We've seen the Williams being very quick. The new Renault engine has possibly a vibration problem, which they may not have sorted out completely yet. So it's a long race. It's going to be very hot here in Melbourne tomorrow. It's not all over yet.
A quick word about Michael Schumacher.
Michael Schumacher was at his classic best, running over the curbs, heading for the concrete walls, sending the dust up. Total commitment, 150%, brilliant to watch. And if he was on the hard tyres, as they were suggesting, and he's also using the Evolution 1 engine, which is not even the new engine, there's a lot more to come, and it'd be great if we can see Michael up there on the front row and really challenging hard.
I won't push you on Gerhard Berger, because he hasn't had the best of days, I know that, and we'll torment you with that one.
Outside bet, well said.
But just a prediction from both of you, really, about the race itself. What are your thoughts, Simon?
What is going to be fascinating is what happens to the other cars apart from the Williams, and who will take a risk on tyres, start on softer tyres. We know that Schumacher was running on the harder tyres. Pit stops will play a huge role.
The winner?
Villeneuve.
Villeneuve.
OK, that's the unanimous vote from here. There's a terrific build-up to the Grand Prix that I'll tell you about in a moment, and our competition, actually, you can win a trip here next year if you take part in that competition. Dial that number, 0897 50 50 555, or send a stamped addressed envelope to that address on there, ITV pole position, PO Box 300, Sunderland SR4 6YP. Cash prizes available every F1 weekend, and the big winner gets a family trip to join us here next year. Great programmes leading up to the Grand Prix itself here on ITV. Murray's here at 5:15 Saturday afternoon. Join Clive James, 10 o'clock, the Formula One show, Grand Prix the movie, James Garner's finest hour at 11 o'clock. We're live 2:05 Sunday morning, and the Australian Grand Prix, the rerun, if you don't fancy joining us live here, but I hope you will, at 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Right, the first qualifying session is over, and the message is very clear from the Williams team. Catch us if you can. See you for the race. Bye-bye.